wants to join the mob.
Betray me!
No, you betrayed me first, sweetheart.
I think that's a body.
General Hospital.
Steve Burton may be nearly unstoppable when he steps into the world of Jason Morgan, but apparently even Jason's alter ego has nothing on the danger of visiting his mother-in-law's house. A recent story shared by Steve's wife, Michelle Lundstrom, has fans laughing over an unexpectedly chaotic family visit. What began as an ordinary trip to see family reportedly turned into a series of small mishaps, leaving Michelle caught between amusement, embarrassment, and the fear of explaining everything to her mom. And the funniest part? Steve himself seemed determined to defend his case. Michelle shared a series of posts describing several things that went wrong during the visit to her Italian mother's home. The incidents were not presented as serious problems, but rather as a funny collection of household accidents that quickly became a memorable family story. For fans who know Steve primarily as Jason Morgan on General Hospital, the contrast was almost too perfect. Jason Morgan can face dangerous criminals, complicated schemes, and impossible situations without blinking. But Steve Burton standing in front of a broken decoration at his mother-in-law's house? Suddenly, the stakes seem much higher. Michelle's first story involved a small deer decoration. Steve could be heard insisting that he had not caused the damage. He was holding up part of the decoration while trying to explain what had happened. At first, it appeared that the deer had lost a leg. Michelle described the moment as one where you could practically hear the panic in her reaction. But then came the explanation. According to Michelle's account, Steve ultimately had not broken the deer's leg after all. The damage was apparently limited to the tail. That may sound like a minor distinction, but when you're visiting your mother-in-law's house and something breaks, every little detail suddenly matters. And Steve appeared ready to make sure everyone understood that he was not responsible for the worst of the damage. But the story did not end there. The next incident involved another decoration, this time a moose. Steve was shown holding up the damaged piece, with one of the moose's antlers apparently missing. Michelle found the situation hilarious and described the room as suffering another casualty. That detail made the situation even funnier because this was not just any random collection of decorations. These items were part of her mother's home, and Michelle was clearly aware that her mom might not find the situation quite as entertaining as everyone else did. Imagine watching someone you love accidentally damage one decoration, then another, then another. At some point, you stop asking whether something else could go wrong and start wondering what will happen next. That seems to be exactly what happened during this family visit. And then came what Michelle presented as the grand finale. A damaged piece connected to a bed became the next problem. Steve reportedly tried to defend himself by suggesting that the piece could have been extremely old. He reportedly described it as being around a century old. But Michelle had a different perspective. She maintained that the bed itself was new, despite being positioned near older furniture. Once again, Steve seemed to be trying to establish his innocence, and Michelle seemed more interested in documenting the entire situation for laughs. The result was a three-part story that quickly became a funny glimpse into their life away from the cameras. There's something especially entertaining about seeing a familiar soap star in a completely ordinary family situation. On General Hospital, Steve Burton's Jason Morgan is known for being calm under pressure. Jason has survived countless dramatic situations in Port Charles. He's dealt with danger, betrayal, family conflict, and high-stakes decisions. But apparently, none of that prepares you for the possibility of accidentally damaging your mother-in-law's decorations. That contrast is exactly what made Michelle's story resonate with fans. People began imagining how Jason Morgan would react if he were in the same situation. Would Jason calmly explain what happened? Would he investigate the broken decoration like a mystery? Would he simply disappear before anyone could ask questions? Or would even Jason Morgan finally admit that he was in trouble? Fans clearly had fun with the comparison. Some reactions imagine Jason facing his greatest challenge yet, not a criminal organization, not a dangerous rival, but an unhappy Italian mother-in-law. Others joked about the panic that comes with breaking something in your spouse's family home.
And that may be the most relatable part of this entire story. Almost everyone understands that feeling when something accidentally breaks in someone else's house. The first instinct is usually denial. Then comes confusion. Then an investigation. Then the question nobody wants to hear: who broke it? Suddenly, everyone becomes a detective. Steve's playful defense made the story even more entertaining because instead of turning the situation into a serious argument, the couple appeared to embrace the humor of it. Michelle's posts gave fans a rare look at the lighter side of their relationship. Since their marriage, Steve and Michelle have occasionally shared glimpses of their life together, allowing fans to see a side of the actor that is very different from the intense world of daytime television. Michelle is also known to viewers for her appearance on Netflix's Barbecue Showdown, giving the couple an interesting connection to two very different entertainment worlds. Steve has spent decades working in daytime television, while Michelle has built her own presence through food, television, and social media. Together, they have occasionally shown that their life away from the screen can be just as entertaining as anything happening in Port Charles. And this latest story certainly fits that pattern. There was no major scandal here, no dangerous conspiracy, no dramatic betrayal, just a husband, a family visit, a few damaged household decorations, and a wife who decided the whole situation was too funny not to share. That distinction is important because the phrase "Steve Burton exposed" may sound dramatic, but the reality behind the story is much lighthearted. Michelle was essentially giving fans a funny behind-the-scenes look at married life. Still, the story has created plenty of conversation because fans love seeing their favorite stars behave like normal people. Soap actors spend so much time portraying dramatic situations that audiences sometimes forget they have ordinary lives outside the fictional worlds they inhabit. Steve Burton's Jason Morgan may be one of Port Charles's toughest characters, but Steve himself can still find himself in an awkward situation at a family gathering. And honestly, that may make fans like him even more. The story also highlights something important about Michelle's personality. Rather than presenting the mishaps as something embarrassing that needed to be hidden, she turned them into a funny family memory. Her reaction suggested that she was laughing at the situation rather than trying to create unnecessary drama. That playful attitude is probably one reason fans responded so strongly. There is also something wonderfully familiar about the way Michelle described the fear of her mother discovering what had happened. Anyone who has ever visited a parent's house knows that some objects simply cannot be touched. There are decorations that have been sitting in the same place for years. There are furniture pieces with sentimental value. There are items that may look ordinary to a visitor, but mean everything to the person who owns them. So when something suddenly breaks, the person responsible may be less worried about the object itself and more worried about the upcoming conversation. That seems to have been the real comedy behind Michelle's story. Steve apparently survived the visit, but fans were left wondering whether he would be welcomed back into the so-called wilderness room anytime soon. Of course, this entire situation also gives General Hospital fans another reason to talk about Steve Burton. His return and ongoing presence as Jason Morgan continue to attract attention, and stories from his personal life often create a different kind of connection between him and the audience. Fans are used to seeing Jason as serious and controlled. Michelle's posts show Steve in a much more relaxed and humorous environment. That contrast makes these moments memorable. It reminds viewers that behind every intense soap storyline is an actor who eventually goes home, spends time with family,
laughs at everyday mistakes, and occasionally has to explain why a decoration suddenly has fewer pieces than it did before. So, was Steve Burton really exposed? Not in the dramatic way that phrase might suggest. Instead, Michelle exposed something much more entertaining. Michelle apparently has discovered that surviving Port Charles does not necessarily mean surviving a visit to his mother-in-law's house without incident. And perhaps that is the real lesson here. You can be Jason Morgan. You can face almost anything General Hospital throws at you. You can survive years of danger and chaos, but never underestimate the power of an angry mother-in-law discovering a broken family decoration. What makes this story especially fun is that it gives fans something positive to discuss. There is no complicated mystery to solve, no huge villain to identify, no huge secret waiting to destroy Port Charles, just a funny moment between a married couple that turned into an entertaining story for fans. And judging from the reactions, many viewers were more than happy to imagine Jason Morgan dealing with exactly the same situation. So now the question is, if Jason Morgan were in Steve's position, what would he do? Would he admit everything immediately? Would he investigate the scene? Or would Jason simply look around, say nothing, and walk away? For Steve Burton, at least, the real-life version appears to have involved plenty of explanations and a very observant wife. Michelle's decision to share the story has given fans another light-hearted glimpse into their world, and it is a reminder that sometimes the funniest celebrity stories are not carefully planned. They happen naturally. A family visit, a few fragile decorations, a nervous reaction, a husband trying to explain himself, and a wife capturing the entire adventure. That's enough to create a story fans will remember. For General Hospital viewers, it is a refreshing reminder that their favorite actors have lives beyond Port Charles. Steve Burton may always be closely associated with Jason Morgan, but stories like this allow fans to see the person behind the character. And sometimes, that person is simply trying to survive a family visit without breaking anything else. What do you think about Michelle's hilarious story? Do you think Steve really caused all three mishaps, or is he getting blamed for things that were already destined to fall apart? And if Jason Morgan were in Steve's position, do you think he could talk his way out of trouble? Share your thoughts, and if you enjoy General Hospital updates, character news, and behind-the-scenes stories about the stars, make sure to stay tuned for more.